But I would like to just say, I hope we can all keep Eleanor Dawkins in our prayers. Her daughter passed away this week, Karen Dawkins, and former board member. Our hearts go out. Reverend Williams.
Let us pray. O God, may your spirit of love and peace guide our hearts to see the work that you have called us to. Lord, would you allow goodwill, compassion, uplift to fill this space? Would we not be concerned of the worries of this world, but be concerned about the work that you've called us to? We pray that this space would not be separated from your love and care, but that we would allow your spirit to be our guide. We pray for community, God, and not division. God, we pray for hope and not that others would be delusioned of what they see. Lord, we pray for love for all humankind and God for our children. God, we come right now, God, knowing that we need you to stand in the midst of the gap. For God, there are many minds within this space, but God, we're grateful that you are of all knowledge. So God, we pray for a renaissance among our children. Lord, among our schools, among our teachers, among those who lead. Lord, we pray that the status quo would not be the day of order, but God, that we would do something different in your will. Lord, we pray that greed would not prevail in our thoughts and actions. God, let us stand as an instrument of change and hope. May our lives be lived in service to you and also to those who we serve. May we not become distracted with the aims of the adversary, but may we constantly seek to you for all things. It's in your Son, Jesus' name, we do say, amen.
Amen. And I would ask that we rise for the Jefferson Davis High School ROTC. We will say the Pledge of Allegiance without them today. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I can see we have a quorum tonight. We have an agenda before us. Is there a motion to accept it?
Madam President, I move that we approve the revised agenda as printed.
Second.
All in favor signify by a raising of hand. Opposed? Mr. Salter. Well, you know what? Before we do that, I'd like to say a couple of things. What I want to say is here somewhere. Okay, couple of good news things I would like to report on. The board wants to congratulate the Johnny Carr boys baseball team and the Floyd Middle Magnets girls softball team for being champions in the inaugural MPS Middle School League. We want to thank David Thomas and his committee, which worked very hard to raise money and organize the league this year. They solicited help from churches, businesses, organizations, and the county commissioners. Talk about community support. We hope that program does very, very well and grows next year and beyond. The thing that I really wanted to recognize tonight before we get started is the accomplishments of the senior class of 2019. Our students earned over almost $74 million in scholarships. There was $73,988,211. And I wanted to read the breakdown of it because I think it's really important to understand. We had some good money offered our kids from all schools. So Lamp had the most with 24,700,000 and almost 50,000. Lee had 11,847,000. Park Crossing had 8,417,000. Jeff Davis, 8,159,000. Carver had 6,000,000, almost 6,700,000. BTW had almost 6,000,000. Rotc had 5,465,000, and my alma mater, Lanier, had $2,514,000 and $624. What I want to point out to you is that the magnets had $36,152,000 in scholarships. But what I was particularly pleased with is the traditional schools had $37,835. This shows me that the colleges have recognized the hard work of our students, and apparently they value MPS graduates, so I'm thrilled with that. Just a little point, since 2001, $354 million in scholarships, and I'm just very, since 2011, that's what I have written, but at any rate, it's a great accomplishment, and I just want to remind you, we are moving forward every day. So, now, I will turn this over to Mr. Salter.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman and members of the board, honored guests. Thank you for being with us tonight. We have several students here boasting a wide range of accomplishments, so let's jump right in with 4 students from 3 different schools who've received national recognition for artistic achievements. Will Alma Florence Zimmer, Ya-Lin Ha, Lee Gaines, and Ya-Jin Han, and all their principals and teachers and folks like that come forward, please? Just come right on up here, please. Come on in. Give them a, yeah, sure, give them a hand. These 4 students all won National PTA Reflections Awards. Ya-Lin is a BTW student, won an Award of Excellence in Visual Arts. Alma Florence is a Forest Avenue Academic Magnet student. She won an Award of Merit in Visual Arts. Ye Jin, and a Baldwin Arts and Academics Magnet student, won an Award of Merit in Literature. And Lee, a BTW student, also won an Award of Merit in Literature. Award of Excellence winners receive a silver medal and an Award of Excellence certificate and a $200 Young Artist Scholarship. Award of Merit winners receive a bronze medal and an Award of Merit certificate. All the winners' works will be included in a 6-month traveling exhibition that will start in Washington, D.C. All the winners are also invited to the National PTA Award and Reflection Celebration in Columbus, Ohio in June. MPS has an incredible reputation, both, in these awards. There were only 5 winners of National PTA Reflections Award in the entire state, so 4 of the 5 are standing right here in front of you. Do we have moms, dads, granddads, anybody here that wants to stand up and get a, there we go, all right, congratulations guys. And I would be remiss if I also didn't point out the mama of all of PTA is Paula Lyman. And Paula Lyman is here. You're welcome. Is your compadre Leon with us? I didn't see him. He's not here tonight. Okay. Let me tell you a couple things about Paula Lyman. Paula has been involved in the PTA since I think her kids were little bitty, itty bitty. And they've all graduated and gone, and she's still involved in PTA. She's at every county council meeting. She goes and helps schools when they have trouble with their PTA. And she's one of my favorite people in the world, and I just want to say thank you, Paula. And I know these students do too, because you guys are there because of in part because of her hard work as well as your hard work. So thank you so much, Paula, and congratulations to all of our kids who did so well. Thank you very much. Thank you. You can come on now. Sorry. Okay. You can take a step forward. Next, we have our Johnny Carr Middle School Choralers, their honor choir, with Director Brian Cutter and Principal William Conyers. With all you got, we have 5 of the choir members, not the whole choir. As you can tell, we're kind of sardined in here anyway, so we needed to make a little room. Are your choir members here? Oh, well, it's just you then, or y'all then, and hopefully, well, you can hand out their certificates. The choralers, am I saying that the right way? The choralers, is that the choraliers? I was close. The choraliers traveled to National Music USA Festival and won first place Superior and grand champion in the middle school concert choir division. And we didn't have enough room for the entire group, so we invited five students, but we didn't have room for them either, apparently. But you'll make sure they get all their certificates. We'd also like to add that the Carr Middle School Concert Band won second place in the middle school band division, so congratulations to them as well. We have a certificate for both the band and for the choir. So congratulations, sir, and for all y'all's hard work, thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Next, we move on to athletics, where we have a few track stars, including a couple of record setters. Well, Brett Bonikowski, am I close on that? Brett, Shanice Spicer, and Jasmine Riley, and their principals and coaches come forward, please. All 3 of those students had first place finishes in the Alabama High School Athletic Association outdoor track meet. We'll start with Brett. Brett's a LAMP student who finished first in both the 3,200 meter and 1,600 meter events. And you know, I never was very good at math, and I'm even worse when it comes to metrics. So just tell me, is that a long way? That's a long way, okay. All right, so congratulations for that. Next is Jasmine, who should look familiar to you. She's been to a couple of board meetings now. She's a senior at Park Crossing. She finished first in both the 100 meter and 200 meter, and her times were both record breakers. However, they didn't count because of some technicality because of the wind. What went on with the wind? What was going on? Well, it still seems like you could. What do they think, you got a good tailwind so that you, is that it? Wow. Okay. And Shanice is a sophomore at Rotc, and she set, are you ready for this, a new state record in the 200 meter at 23.79 seconds. Again, I don't know much about math, but that sounds fast to me. That was running at, after running a 23.5 in the preliminaries. Wow, so endurance and speed. Oh, okay, all right, gotcha, all right. All right, she finished first in both the 100 and 400 meters, so let's give her a great big round of applause. We also had MPS athletes who placed second and third in track meet. At the track meet, they were Jack Porter, Kathy Hammond of LAMP, Fabona Jackson, and Corinthian Phillips, and the girls' 400 by 100 relay team from Rotc, and Donald Steele from Carver High School. Any moms, dads here? Anybody want to take credit for all this? There you go. There you go. Stand up. Well, congratulations, and good luck in the future in breaking more records and running long ways. Thank you very much. Congratulations, guys. Congratulations. One more. All right, next we have our employees of the month. Derry K. Grissett and Pelster Williams. Unfortunately, we only have Mr. Williams here with us this evening. Come on up. Where is he? All right, fantastic. Mr. Grissett is the band director at Brubaker, and he's currently at Florence with a group of students, but I think his principal is here, and she's going to stand in. You're going to sing for us a little bit? No? Okay. We'll start with Mr. Williams, who's been a custodian with MPS for 18 years, including 15 with the Department of Special Education in Bellinger Hill. He takes great pride in his work and is proactive in addressing issues that arise. For instance, he noticed a water leak at the end of his workday one evening. He immediately called the maintenance department and waited until 8 o'clock on a Friday night to ensure the problem was fixed and everything was cleaned up. He also comes in on weekends and holidays when there's bad weather to check for leaks or frozen pipes. He always takes part in special education events, proudly wearing his autism awareness for Special Olympics activities. He's even brought items for Special Olympics for students who participated. Let's give him a great big round of applause. Mr. Grissett has been a positive addition to the Brubaker Middle School family since his arrival in November. In that time, he's already sparked a love of music in students through the marching band program. He makes clear that self-discipline is the key to becoming a great musician. His students have performed in the Montgomery Christmas Parade, the Mobile Carnival of Parades, and the Alabama State Battle of the Bands Jamboree, where they were the only middle school competing against high schools from around the Southeast. Principal Davis will ensure that he gets his... Oh, okay. Well, that's even better. That's even better. Well, Mrs. Grissett then will make sure he gets his $25 gift card and his certificate suitable for framing. The gift card is from Target, but it's sponsored by the Baptist South. They've been our sponsors all year for our Employee of the Month. Let's give these two cherished employees a big hand and congratulations. They'll also have an article about them in the newspaper. Right, Krista? Right. Okay, good. All right, thank you so much.
Okay, next on our agenda is schedule public comments. And our first up will be Sarah Messick. I do want to remind you about the rules for public comments. Requests must be made in advance in writing to the superintendent's office by 4:30 on the Tuesday preceding the meeting date. Requests must have specified the nature of the business to be taken up with the board and the name of the person who will address the board to be added to the agenda. Communications must be respectful. Discussing specific student or employee matters will not be allowed. Individuals who have concerns that are inappropriate to be solved in the venue are welcome to seek a problem-solving meeting with the superintendent. Immediate feedback by the board may not be provided. However, you may be contacted for follow-up by the superintendent or designee. Public comments may not exceed 5 minutes. The board chair has the authority to terminate the remarks if any person whose comments contain personal attacks, exceed the time limit, or are otherwise inappropriate. A speaker may be considered disruptive who continues to speak when their allotted time has ended, when asked to stop speaking by the board chairman, or is otherwise inappropriate. And if a person fails to comply when asked to terminate comments, he or she will be escorted to their seat, out of the auditorium, and or off of MPS property, depending on the level of disruption. So Sarah Messick is to talk about my past, present, and future at BTW.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Messick. I am a senior and soon-to-be graduate from BTW Magnet High School. I have been a part of the Dance Magnet all 4 years of my high school career. I will be attending Troy University in the fall on scholarship. I was also accepted to all 4 colleges that I applied for and received scholarship. I have been a part of the National Honor Society since sophomore year, and I was invited into the Math, English, Science, History, and French Honor Societies as well. These are just a few of the accomplishments that I have attained throughout high school. None of these accomplishments would have been possible without the teachers, staff, and students at BTW. I owe every accomplishment so far to my high school. BTW is a high school that takes in intelligent freshmen and graduates intelligent, creative, and excellent seniors who are prepared for not only college, but for life. It is a high school that requires skills of time management, focus, patience, open-mindedness, and work ethic in order to meet the academic requirements set. If a student comes in without these skills, they leave with them. However, this does not make BTW special because many high schools enforce the same academic achievement standards. What makes BTW special is the creative arts portion of the school. As students, we are required to maintain not only a high GPA, but are also expected to excel in our magnet. It has been here in my magnet that I have personally learned skills that will be of higher value than anything I learned in a core class. Through dance at BTW, I have learned perseverance, patience, hard work, humility, self-confidence, and how to not only learn from, but correct past mistakes. These are life lessons that will help students at our school achieve our motto, excellence in all things. Before I begin to bring requests on behalf of my high school, I would like to personally thank each of you for the part you play in not only BTW, but all MPS schools. I know that your jobs include stress-filled problem-solving situations for all MPS schools, and I know I would not want to be in your positions. So for that, I say thank you. Now on to the request. As all of you are aware, Building C and D of BTW's old campus burned down last August. These buildings house multiple magnets, including the CAT, theater, musical theater, art, photography, and broadcast magnets, and included the library, counselor's office, lunchroom, and other classrooms. In a time that seemed that all hope was lost, the community came and restored some hope for BTW. Businesses, organizations, and other schools donated countless supplies in an attempt to restore what was lost. In addition to donations, parents, teachers, students, businesses, organizations, and many others put hours of work into helping with whatever was needed to successfully move. To see the community take time from their own busy schedules to help BTW shows that BTW is an important school that adds not only to the school system, but to the community as well. We are grateful for all who helped and donated to get us moved into the Hayneville Road destination in a week. However, the temporary campus BTW was moved to was previously an elementary school. Therefore, the bathrooms, stalls, lunch tables, and classrooms were made for little bodies that high schoolers almost don't fit in. The only perks of this temporary building include ceilings that are not falling, that is mold-free, and that there is a gym, all of which we did not have at our original campus. We were the only high school that did not have a gym, and being a performing arts school, we did not have an auditorium or stage that we could use to perform. These were things that we managed and were still able to achieve excellence without, although needed. However, there were health concerns with the state of the buildings that we could not manage, and it seemed as if BTW was on the bottom of the to-do list. It is time to focus on the schools that are adding to and excelling for MPS as a whole. It is time to pour into succeeding high schools like BTW so they can thrive to the highest extent and continue to save our school system. BTW students and staff are going to excel no matter the location. This year is a primary example of that. Our school was burned down, yet we still have 100% graduation rate with millions of dollars in scholarships to colleges and art schools across the country. Yet, I want the best for current and future BTW students. I want them to have a performing arts center that is equipped for each magnet to excel. BTW past, present, and future students deserve to be on the top of the to-do list. We have earned it. I have no doubt that with a new building, future BTW will make MPS proud and will continue to educate students who are successful in life. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me this evening. I hope that everything I said will go into consideration for the betterment of one of MPS's top schools. Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. It was an error of omission, but KT Brown should have been on our agenda to speak tonight about our children.
Thank you and good afternoon. Most of the comments that I have received in the past between the meetings have been compliments, but I did receive some negative statements that I wanted to bring before you so that we can resolve them for the benefit of our students. And one of the comments that they made was that they are jealous because You are going to schools in your area, but you're not going to all of them. They're saying that they see you at certain schools all the time, but you never come to their school. Now, I'm not going to name the schools. But think about the schools that you have not visited in your area, that you are in charge of. And you will know which ones are calling you, telling you that you never show up. I also received a comment on absenteeism of teachers. And they're saying that the children are being placed in classrooms. So therefore, the day that they are at school, they're not receiving what they need to receive. And that you need to meet and come up with a policy that deals with teacher absenteeism. The next thing they said is, according to what I've said at every meeting, you need counselors for the students entering school. You need counselors for the 6th grade. You need counselors for the 9th grade in particular, so that these children will receive the correct information when they enter that school. Instead of dealing with them, dealing with the counselors with all of these written assignments and testing, it would help out if you gave them a little time to deal with the children. Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is our citizens' comments, and we have 3 people. The same rules basically apply that I read earlier. I'm going to forego reading them again. You will have 3 minutes, and the first person to speak about the personnel report is Bernita Patterson Ryan.
Good evening. I wear several hats this evening, but the one that I chose to wear this evening is one of the most important hats I wear, which is a parent of a Montgomery Public School student. My son is a student at Carver High School. He's a 9th grade student with an exceptionality. And from what we are hearing as parents, that 17 units will be cut from Carver High School. Now, what decision how do we go about making this decision? Do we cut the math teachers, where my son, whose area of weakness is math, there are already 35 students in that classroom? Or do we cut the resource teacher, who has to split her time between my son's math class or another math class because we don't have enough resource teachers already? Do we put 40 students in a classroom where our school is not equipped to hold only 20 to 25 students? We've had a teacher who's had 41 students in their class. All the students did not have desks. We already don't have enough textbooks. Do we make these cuts equally across the system? Do the magnet schools, who have 10-to-1 ratio as opposed to 30-to-1 like we have, do we cut some of their elective teachers or their core teachers? So I want to make sure that it's done equally for all of our students, especially for my son, because all of my eggs are in one basket, unlike everyone else's. And if I crack my own egg, that's me. But I will not let MPS crack my egg. All right? And if we are trying to move forward, we should not neglect the individuals who could move us forward as a school system, and that's all of our students. My son in particular, who I can speak about personally. Thank you.
Okay, we have Tanisha Williams. I hope I said that correctly.
It's Tanisa.
Tanisa.
Ty is fine. My question is regarding the rules on the reduction of force. According to the Board of Education Policy Manual, point 5.16.2, it says that employees are laid off under the authority must be determined on an objective criteria. But our objective criteria says it has to be verifiable, calculatable, measurable, or otherwise determinable by means or methods other than personal subjective judgments or the opinions of people applying the criteria. My question is, if we're saying we're cutting 140 people, is that including attrition? And if not, why say 140? Let's go ahead and take the attrition out. Also, what objective criteria was used to determine that amount of layoffs, and based on what? They said that it's the salaries of the teachers, and there's been different information put out about it, $70,000 per teacher. Every teacher doesn't make that or get that. So the question is there a budget that shows how this determination was made and what the amounts were? Will that budget be made public? Because we're dealing with the livelihoods of us, and we need to know what is the criteria. The next question that I have is, if Georgia Washington was sold to offset our deficit, and we sold it, then how is there a deficit again when we have a high number of long-term subs? We have teacher shortages that require emergency certifications, and we have classroom sizes that are larger than what we can have in capacity. My third question is, are all schools being included or affected by the reduction of force? Because there's clarification needed that, as she said earlier. We have class sizes that are extremely large on our end of the spectrum, but then the magnet schools have smaller class sizes and a larger number of teachers. So if we're going to apply it across the board, because we all are equally teachers as well, then we need to find out if that information is correct, because one school shouldn't lose that many teachers when we have a large number of students in our schools. The last question I have is there any other place, position, that is available in the budget that can be reduced without affecting teacher livelihoods, people who have maybe higher salaries, positions that are funded, or budgets or programs that may not be exactly necessary to the detriment of our students, so that we don't take positions, teacher positions from schools that are already at their maximum. And so it's not a personal attack at all, it's just saying, what are other areas that can be cut so that the teachers can be there for our students? Because we are overloaded, but we love our students, and we want to be able to work and live, and we're not getting that opportunity. Thank you for your time.
And Pamela West. Pamela West. Oh, okay. Okay.
Good afternoon. My colleagues made some excellent points, so I'm not going to repeat those, but I wholeheartedly agree with everything that was spoken here. I do want to refer to when I sat in on a budget meeting, there were some assumptions made for this budget. And one assumption was, with 6.8 million deficit, you said we can incur over 2 physical years. So I'm trying to figure out how we came up with 12 million with the cuts. So that's a big concern for me. Also, have we looked at getting in contact with the Montgomery County Commissioner, because once before they took out that 2.8 million, and I want to know, have you all spoken with them returning that money and offering it to us to help offset some of these layoffs and all of that information? My third point, and excuse me, I said 6.8, it's actually 6.3 million or 2.8%. And it says estimated based on current known circumstances. So have we been given some future circumstances that wasn't mentioned in this assumptions that were provided to the board? Because the assumptions were there was a 6.3 million or 2.8% for the next 2 physical operating cycles. And you did mention consolidating some facilities to cover that. But now, looking at what I saw at the special call meeting, the cuts was going up to 12 million. So that's a big difference from 6.3 to 12 million. So if you can find that out for me, greatly appreciate it. Since we are doing a reduction in force, does that mean we have a hiring freeze in the system? So we won't have new teacher orientation, won't have a lot of other programs? because we shouldn't be searching for new teachers when you got teachers already working for MPS, and we think about laying off 140. AEA and MCA, we put on a retirement program each year, and our estimated retirements were about 74 teachers, could be more. So was that number looked at out of that 140, or is this 140 additional? And also you have some teachers and positions that resigned. So if you could kindly forward that information, be greatly appreciated, and thank you for your time.
Okay, so, since we're talking about, reduction in force, our chairperson, the president, has asked me to make some comments, and I took some notes as different ones were talking. And so I'm gonna answer those, in a very non-specific way, but I hope that I can give you some information that I also shared at the last, can you all hear me in the back? No. Okay, is this mic on? Hold on.
Closer to you.
Okay, so we'll start over. So I'm going to give you some answers without being too specific because this has not been voted on yet. But at the last meeting, we talked about the reduction in force and how that works. I took notes as some of you were speaking, and so I do little bullets as I go, so I hope I don't miss anything. But as you know, starting off with the number of students and class size in your middle and high schools, a teacher can have up to 150 students per day by law. So it's not necessarily class size. I think in many ways that can be a scheduling issue that I would have to ask our principals, high school especially, to deal with. So that if a teacher has 40, of course I'm sure Ms. Gillis will be aware of that and deal with it. But if they have 40 at one period and 20 at the other period, the balancing act is about 150 per day. So we'll certainly deal with that. Also, Title I schools can use some of their Title I money to backfill any reductions that might occur where they feel they might need some more teachers. Also, we have the federal money that is a reduction in the class size, reduction units that can also be used and put into play, and that funding can also be used to help take care of some of those issues if it becomes a very tight situation. So there are ways to deal with this that would be using federal dollars to take care of it. We are talking about a reduction in our general fund, and that is where we have the issue with an unbalanced budget where we do have a deficit. The other one, yes, attrition is included and retirement in that 140. In many cases, some of those folks have already retired and or been reduced, maybe some non-tenured people, and that is also a part of that number of 140. The $70,000 that was mentioned as a number, that is a ballpark average of salary and benefits for a teacher, because in addition to getting what you are paid as a teacher, you also get additional benefits. So that ballpark is an average of about 70,000. The Georgia-Washington question, that was a one-time deal. It's kind of like Mr. Watts always says, if you have $100 in a savings account and you have $100 salary every week and you spend 110, you take 10 out of that savings and eventually that goes away. We are looking for a more permanent way of balancing our budget. And as you know, in our business, it's a people kind of business. So 80 to 85% perhaps of our budget goes toward people and salaries. So that's where we have to look for something more permanent. I've had calls and emails from people who said, what about donations, corporate donations? Again, that's a one-time thing. You get it this year, it goes away. Next year, we don't have it. So it is not going to be a permanent sort of resolution for our problem. So we're going to have to look at our staffing issues. Yes, all areas were considered when we looked at this, and we went department by department. Someone asked about a cut. we're saying about somewhere between 10 to $12 million deficit, so that we can try to compensate and stabilize our school district so that we're not in the red all the time. We want to be in the black, and we have a 10 mil sort of funding locally for our school system that is not nearly where it needs to be. I was somewhere the other day and I'm hearing that they are now up about 57 mills in their school district, or 58. I'm going to re-verify. I'll tell you where it is. It's Huntsville. They said, you know, when I was there it was 27.5, but when I was there for a visit last week, visiting some schools with some of our folks, they now are about 57, 58 mills. I'm going to check that to make sure, but still, that's a high number, and we only have 10. So that's something we have to think about. I think our board has done a great job of talking to commissioners about the cuts that were made and the money that was taken away from our system. So they have been addressing that over the past, I know, years since I've been here. So yes, that has also been part of it. Now, also the question about the future projections. Remember this, we have to give a 4% raise. That has been a part of what is coming down the pike from the legislature. That means everybody who works for MPS gets a 4% raise. Teachers, clerical people, custodians, they get the 4% raise. That's mandated. So on top of the deficit that we already have, and we have to also give a 4% raise, you're again dipping into local money that just is not there. So yes, we have to compensate for that and make sure that we're ready in the future. If that happens, it'll, you know, depending, we could probably wait till October 1 before it starts, but we might start it for 12-month people in, what, June, July? So that is coming, and it will be here no later than October if all that works out. So that is another projection for the future that we have to think about, that 4% raise. Everybody gets it, no matter what. And I'm sure when they get their checks, they'll want to see that 4% on there. And I can't tell them that I'm not going to give it to them, because it's required that we give it to them, even if it's not part of our allocation from the state. So anything above the allocation from the state that we have to do locally, if we decide to keep a lot of local units, those people still get the 4% raise. And then the question of the hiring freeze, I would say we only will freeze on areas where we already have enough people on board. There will be some areas, I'm sure, as with any business, where you have to go back in and hire some people. Part of that under the RIF is a recall, so that if you were let go during the RIF, then you are some of the first people that get called back to come back, unless there is a performance or certification issue. So if you have a performance or certification issue, you will not be in that recall. But those people are already aware of who they are. So that is not, I don't see that as being a big issue. So we're freezing if we don't need someone in a spot, but otherwise, we will only deal with the recall first and then fill in any positions that, you know, because summer is still coming, people still retire and move away, and so we'll have to take all of those things into consideration. I think I hit most of the things that I heard.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very informative. I'm going to get you to also continue talking, because we are at the point of receiving information about Attorney Alan Ziegler.
Okay. So, you know, you've heard us talk many, many times about the need to increase our millage. And that process is a little bit more complicated than it appears. And so in every area, metropolitan area, county, or whatever, will sometimes have different ways of collecting that 1 meal or assessing that, or 10 meals, I should say, in our case. So we talked a lot about asking for more from our citizens, and there's a process involved. This gentleman, Mr. Ziegler, has been used across the state in many ways to help school districts figure out the best way to approach asking for an additional amount of millage from the local citizens. He's been used, I think some of you board members have checked him out, and you know that in the last year, several systems have used him. He's probably one of the best that you can find in the state to do this kind of work. And so I had approached him earlier about considering helping us. He has sent us a proposal, which I shared with you several months ago. And so then most recently I talked with him again and to see if there was a possibility that he might consider a reduction. He could not consider it because of the firm that he's with, and they have their set standards on what they bill. However, he did say that some of the people that he will work with and consult with in his firm will be attorneys who don't have as much seniority as he has, and so their billing might be a little bit less, and we might be able to compensate that way so that it would not be entirely a billing for him all of the time, but he would be directly involved with the consultation.
Ms. President?
Yes.
2 questions on that. I did notice that he did not negotiate the $450, which I have checked with several attorneys, and that is still astronomical. But we're going to do what we're going to do on that. Did we cap it? I mean, was there ever a cap set on this? Because we're sitting here looking at, I don't know how many people in central office, teachers, especially the 140, that are losing their jobs, but we're looking at spending $450 for something that frankly, I'm sorry, I just don't know that it is a time to do this. I think it's critical that we think about what we're doing here and look at, do we need more teachers, or do we need to hire an attorney for $450 an hour that can't negotiate, I have a huge problem with this.
So let me respond to that. Of course, it's going to be up to the board whether or not you do this, but in the general scheme of things, cap is something you just stop the services once you get started. You can stop it after a certain point if you feel like it's gone too far, as far as you want it to go.
What is too far?
That would be for you all to decide. But if it's an average of about $30,000 in the general scheme of things, $30,000 to try to get an additional 15, 20 meals so that we can keep people, I think is probably a drop in the bucket. Some may not see it that way if they're, kind of involved in this right now. But to get it where you can keep the people you want to keep or need to keep, or your local units, or have additional local units, I think 30,000 is not a huge amount of money compared to the deficit that we have, $12 million, and trying to get it up so that we can have more money in our coffers, which we don't have right now. We are really pitiful at 10 meals. Compared to anywhere in a place this size in the state of Alabama, we are pitiful with 10 meals.
Okay,
And,
is there a plan, though, as to where, if we did pass that, is there a plan of where those tax dollars will actually go?
We can generate, first of all, we know right now we have $200 million worth of deferred maintenance for our schools. We can't even fix the roofs. We can't fix the air conditioning. We can't fix the windows. They're all different colors. They got units hanging out. We have to prioritize everything that we do because we don't have the money to fix it. And yes, I understand that this is maybe heartburn for some folks because we're trying to reduce so that we can have more money. But at the same time, we'll be looking at this kind of thing forever because the cost of living and everything is going up. It's not going down. And so if we continue to try to survive off of 10 meals in the city of Montgomery, the county of Montgomery, we're going to always be in this shape. And our schools are going to look bad. And we're going to have kids asking, as one person told me, when they took their little girl to one of our magnet schools, the little girl came out that evening and said, "Mama, what did I do wrong?" Because she couldn't understand why she would be sent to a building that looked that bad. And that is a true story. So I'm not, I understand the difficulty in this, but I think if we're going to try to move forward on getting it, then we need to figure out how to get the best advice we can get, and then move forward on getting people in the community at some point, once we figure that piece out, to come out and vote for an increase in the millage, because otherwise we're going to be where we are.
Jim?
And Lisa, Dr. Keith. we had talked, I think when this was presented before, we talked about capping it at $30,000 to $35,000. We have also, or I have, I don't know, I shouldn't have said we. I have also talked to some businesses and to county commissioner, city council, other people in the community to pay for this so that it doesn't come out of our pockets. And we've got a lot of support with that. So I am here on record saying 100% that MPS will not be paying the $30,000 or $35,000, all of the $30,000 or $35,000, because we have commitments that they want to help us. We've told them that we can't afford this on our own because of what we're having to do with layoffs and everything. And, you know, and when I've talked to him, I've said, you know, you want us to fix the schools, you want us to make it better, we've got to raise property taxes. That's really our only go-to right now. So I wanted to make that clear, that this will not be all cost incurred by MPS, that there are businesses, county, city, local legislation that is, wants to help with this.
Thank you, because I did not know that, so I appreciate you sharing that.
Sure.
And then I think we could encourage all of us to talk with our people, you know, to talk with our churches. You know, if they gave $1,000 each, this 30,000 or whatever would be diminished greatly.
Well,
but
30 churches giving $1,000.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
yeah, we want to do what's best for our children if we can. But as a school board, we have to take on the
I need to have quiet in the gallery, please.
we have to take on the obligation of agreeing to enter into this and then seek help from others as we go.
I will be brief, Madam President, and I'd like to, I don't think these things are on. Okay. I'd like to thank Jenna. Well, I turned it off. I'd like to thank Jenna for what she's done. I, too, have talked to some women at churches that are really mobilizing to help to have some financial backing in the Avalon. And I mean, these women are working and planning. I actually spoke to a lady right before I walked in to the meeting. So I understand, Lisa, I don't know where you went. Okay, she's hiding you back there. But your concern, but it feels really good to have people in the community with so much of the, you know, quote unquote flaws that we have that still say, I see the good in MPS and want to stand behind the good, because to them there's more good than there is bad, and it's been going on for a long time, not addressing the issues. I mean, we can go back to the 80s. I go to that point because someone shared some information. We can go that far back on how things have been neglected.
I'm sorry, I have to stop you. Yep. Okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, we'll move on to the revised procedures, bylaws.
Okay, I'll just quickly say that in many cases there's been talk, you know, I get a phone call about changing this or changing that, and so I'm a stickler for looking at policy and any document that's written that kind of directs us as a board. And so I found the board bylaws, which were last, I think, revised maybe in, Ms. Bryce, you have it maybe around 1995, somewhere like that. Anyway, so I asked board members to give me their input about anything they thought that they might want to change or tweak or whatever. So I did hear from a few. And so what I did, I went through and I put some of those tweaks in here, and I kind of redesigned it a little bit to put the language in there, a little bit of wordsmithing, so it's closer to this time that we're in right now. And so what I have here is just not for you to vote on tonight, but I've, you know, it's a document that I revised myself with your input when I got it. And so it's there for you to peruse and decide whether or not anything that's in there that you don't care for or don't like, or anything that you want to leave. But it's for you to look at, think about, and if you want to compare it, I sent you the old one, but if you don't have it, I'll send it to you again tomorrow. And so you can kind of put them side by side and look at them and see if there's anything in there that you want to say a little differently or whatever. So this is just your draft that I've revised on the bylaws.
Can we make a couple comments on that? The only thing I want to make two comments. One, you know, I'm just, there's a place where you are changing the public comments from 5 minutes to 3 minutes and moving the public comments to the end. I do understand, you know, moving it to the end. And I thought about that kind of long and hard, thinking, well, by having those public comments, they could hear just like we do. Oftentimes for the first time, they're hearing it for the first time, and it's maybe good to move it to the end. However, limiting them to 3 minutes, and my understanding is we're limiting it to 3 minutes because sometimes the people that are up seem to be the same people that come up every time, okay? There are some very strong issues that people feel very passionate about and need that 5 minutes. Take, for instance, the BTW young lady, student today, that came and spoke about her school. She needed that 5 minutes. And there is a difference in that 5 minutes and the 3 minutes. So 3 minutes are some people that come here 30 minutes before. But if they've turned in something 2 weeks in advance or a week, whatever the stipulation is, then to me, we're canceling out what put us in office, the public. You know, and that I just don't understand why we would limit them like that.
Okay,
and
so
let me, you know, just second thing, and
I'm sorry.
I may have taken it personal, but one of the bylaws says, you know, that the president and the vice president will be the spokesperson. They've always been the spokesperson, but I know during these AASB trainings, I don't know how many times that or here, it's almost like, well, Dr. Keith, we just don't want you speaking to the media. And I've made it very clear every time, it doesn't matter what's in these bylaws. If the media did approach me, I am going to speak to them, no matter what those bylaws say. And I want that on record.
So my comment is that my edits are based on comments that were given to me by board members. So it's not my document, I just did the work.
Well, you had an open oral comment from me just now, okay?
So I did ask several months ago for you to send me information in writing about what you wanted in the bylaws. So I took what I had and I edited it. But of course, you all get to vote on whether you want it however you want it. I'm just doing the work and I'm giving you a draft. And so if there's something in there that you don't necessarily want to be this way that it is, just put it on in writing and hand it to me, and I'll try to massage it as best I can. And then you guys get to vote. No, ma'am, this is the bylaws for the board to operate from. Bylaws are the operational procedures for the board. And remember this, board meetings are held in public. They are not public meetings. It is a meeting of the board held in public. So these people get to do what they do because of their roles. And so this is their document about what they need to do and how they want to do it. And I'm perfectly open to putting in however you want it. I don't have a problem with that. I'm going to do the work. You submit it to me. I will certainly try to make it look and sound the way you want it to look and sound.
Madam President, I want to go on the record too. Lisa, I agree with you. I would prefer if it stayed 5-3, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, so if you all don't mind, send me an email or whatever. I'm gonna make a note on this, but if you don't mind, because it represents the whole board, I need to hear from everybody. If there's a problem with something in there that you would prefer to change or whatever, I need to hear from everybody what that thing is and what you wanted, kind of what you wanted to say, and I'll do the wordsmithing on it for you. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. It's probably stupid, but why is there a difference in the two different speaking times? One is 5 and one is 3.
Well, when they read simple, a board in 1995 or whatever decided that was what they wanted it to say. These are the bylaws of the board.
But
so,
the people don't they still talk about this? The people that sign up when they get here, they can talk about the same thing that people do in advance. They just get 2 less minutes.
One is supposed to be about agenda items, and then the other one is their own whatever thoughts about whatever.
Okay.
So that's the difference in the two different titles.
Okay.
Okay.
So is it my understanding though? I thought that on these new bylaws, we were making it even citizens' comments had to be agenda. Am I wrong on that?
Citizens'
always been-
comments are on the agenda, and they are prior to discussion because they have to do with an agenda item. It's always been a little fuzzy here. It's been fuzzy because we haven't adhered to what the rules were, which was if there was something that had to do with the agenda, that we would hear before that item came up, which we did tonight. That was correct.
So I'm still not, I guess I'm not trying to be smart.
No, I
I'm just
know.
asking, are we trying to change that? I mean, are y'all trying
No.
to say that, because what I just heard y'all say, you just said you didn't understand. I mean, like, your understanding was it was, the public comments was something about the agenda, but the citizens' comments could have been anything.
That's correct.
All right, that's how it is. Is that how we're leaving it?
Wait a minute,
Or
I have
are
it
we trying to
backwards.
change that?
I have it backwards. Citizens' comments are about something on the agenda.
Okay.
That's the 3 minutes.
That's 3 minutes, and scheduled public comments.
Okay, now I get it. Okay, we're clear.
Yeah. So, please understand, this is not my document. I'm just working on it to try to bring it forward to where we are now. And so if you have some comments and whatever, if you'll send them to me in writing, I'd like to hear from everybody, although there's not a vote right now. But if one person says, leave it on 5 minutes or leave it on 3 and nobody else says anything else, I'm going to have to think that they are okay with the 3 minutes.
Right.
Okay,
But
so I need
but
to hear from everybody.
clarify this on another subject, and again, I'm not trying to be smart here, but I already know how you guys are or feel about some of us making comments to the media, social media, whatever. So it would be a 6-1. But what I'm just making very clear, it can be 6-1 no matter how many people send you stuff. We still have freedom of speech to be able to say what we want to.
No,
So
nobody's trying to take away your freedom of speech,
Okay,
I promise.
I just want to make that,
Yeah, and remember,
Madam
this is not,
President.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Ever since we have had bylaws, it has always been the president, we used to call her chairman, the chairman, her designee. And if we have everybody on the board going to the media, they're gonna always go to the person with the most negative comments. Has been my practice, really. But the president speaks for this board. We can't speak for the board individually. We have to speak as a group. And it's been like that ever since we've had bylaws, so I don't know what the big problem is at this point. And I think that you're not gonna do what's on the bylaws no matter what's here, but.
Okay, all right, let's,
The superintendent has done a good job with this. She has made this very clear. It's easy reading, but it's breaking everything down, so we know if all of us decided we didn't want to follow the bylaws, what kind of board would this be? But we'll have this here, and then you just deal with those that make infractions.
and if you haven't made comments on it, if you haven't sent anything
what
in,
she said.
please do it. I mean, this is a living document that's our document. So, put your thoughts in, and we'll get it, accomplished. Anything else there? If not, we're gonna move on to Mr. Anderson here.
Good evening. Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Moore. I'm here to just give you some more details on the idea that was presented last week with the consolidation of the central office. Look to the next slide there. The rationale behind that is, of course, not being in the county. You would hear about this from afar, needing to lessen the footprint of our buildings. Currently, we have many administrative buildings. Most of those are either old school sites that aren't quite set up the right way to house these different central office areas and to put those in there, so we're kind of spread out through that. But this plan is to bring those groups together, closer together, that work together, and give them a better working environment, lessen our footprint in the locations that we're at, which would decrease the utility cost, and then also the deferred maintenance on those things, and then just also the savings, the possible savings of of that disposal of those properties when we get ready to sell those things as well. So those are some of the ideas as far as what we're looking at. Some of the areas that we're talking about in this are Bellinger Hill, Fair West, and PSC. Those are some of our older buildings that are currently used by administration staff in those areas, and we're looking at those to bring them under one location, under one roof, to be able to work closer together, because Fair West, PSC, and curriculum work very close together. Next slide. And then the first area that we're talking about is curriculum, and working with Dr. Moore, we really wanted to look at it from an approach of who do we need to put together so that they can be more effective in their job assignment, what they're doing. So with curriculum consolidation in those areas, you're talking about the Fair West building and PSC, and then also our third floor upstairs. Bringing those areas together, and I put the list of names here. I know that's too small to read, but you can see that's several personnel from the multiple pages there that would be consolidated closer under one roof so that they can get their jobs done a little bit easier. It's not very easy for Mr. Mitchell to be able to call a meeting, and he's got to pull people from different areas, from his office, from Fair West, from PSC, in order to bring those meetings together. So it just makes a logical plan to bring those guys together, those people together, to work together under one roof. Next slide.
Excuse me.
May we have a copy of that? Are we gonna get a copy of this?
Yes, ma'am. No problem.
I know that's a PowerPoint, Mr. Rowland. I'm saying, am I gonna get a copy? Oh, okay, okay. Yes, the whole thing.
With the list too, because I mean, if it's on the PowerPoint, it'll be too small to read on that too.
We'll copy this for you. We'll get it for you.
Yeah, you'll definitely have the full plan for sure. And then our area at Bellinger Hill is special education, and you know, their position is very critical. And then of course that building is very old as well, with a lot of deferred maintenance, and be able to bring them closer to central office in the different areas. So it'll lessen our footprint by 3 buildings, which is about $200,000 in utility cost savings. And then of course the savings of disposing the property, possible revenue from those things, and being able to bring people closer together to work together that have a need to be near each other and make better planning of their time, not just traveling from location to location.
Okay, dumb question. Just based on that slide, it says move all areas of special education currently located at Bellinger Hill. So that's Bellinger Hill. You're just moving them from one spot to another spot.
We're taking
It's not all 3 of them. You see what I'm saying?
We're taking everyone from Bellinger Hill,
Fair West,
PSC, and third floor into one area. Yes, ma'am.
Madam President, the 200, Mr. Anderson, the 200,000 in utility cost saving, is that per year? And
yes, ma'am. And that's an average based on what we've gathered so far from August to now on those 3 different buildings. So it could vary a little bit. Yes, ma'am.
And you mentioned that also something about selling the buildings or something. Do we have buyers?
Of the property.
Are we tearing them down, or are we selling them?
That's what the architects call it, and disposal of the property when we're trying to resell the property. And that we don't really want to get into tearing down buildings, because there's a cost with that as well. We're going to try to lighten our load in any of this, especially with the move of this. It's not going to be any cost to the general fund other than boxes and that so on and so forth. We're going to use our own personnel to make the move and getting them to that location. Any renovation would be as funds would allow it, and it would definitely not come from the general fund in those renovations.
So, Madam President, if you will, are you saying that we have buyers or potential buyers, or?
We don't know that at this point. We're going to have to consult MPS Legal. That's what the state architects ask you to do in that.
Right.
Our job is really just to gather the list of properties, what types of properties they are, present that to MPS Legal, and then they kind of go at it from there. It is also in conjunction with the state of Alabama. They're involved in this sale with that, and we have to have approval by you, of course, the the state superintendent as well, so.
One other question. How many properties do we currently have, and how many of those have been sold? Do you know?
We've only sold the one as far in my tenure here, and that is the property that was rented by one of the local churches for years, leased by them, and that property has been
Two,
sold.
plus George Washington.
I wasn't here during that time.
But that was one.
Yes.
I heard somebody say Bellingram. Harrison, with the church. All right.
So I think the plan, though, in my discussion with Chad, our plan is to look at all the properties we have, work through all the legalities of disposing property, not tearing it down, but selling it basically, to see how much we can recoup by doing that, combining and then disposing of some properties that we don't use. And that's outside of our normal schools that we use every day. And then we also talked in the plan about the possibility of consolidating and maybe downsizing on some of our schools. We have to go through, I think, in a very organized fashion and look at student enrollment, the area around the school, the growth in the area, some demographic kind of information I think that we really haven't looked at in the past before we decide that this is a school that we need to close. So that when we do it, it makes sense, so to speak. So that's sort of the whole big scheme of what we're looking at. But right now, we know we have so many central offices in various locations, and we're trying to bring them closer together. It will really to close some properties and also help make our work day a little bit more convenient for people to get together and do what they need to do.
I like the fishing.
Okay, I like that too.
And one last question, and this will be the last one. How long do the schools that we have that are currently not used, how long do they typically stay on the market?
I could not answer
On
that
average,
question
yeah, okay.
for you.
I was just curious.
This is my
I'm not
first-
sure we've had properties on the market here of late. So, you know,
We've had a few
We've had a
inquiries
few.
of vacant property that we have. Again, that's gonna be something that through consulting MPS Legal, that they're gonna help us with fair market value. And that's kind of a loaded question there. What is fair market value?
Yeah.
You know, it really is left up to the seller of those things. There are some guidelines and looking through and researching the stuff from the state architects that we have to adhere by, and it's guided by the state superintendent and his area for us.
But I think for us, we need to be pretty aggressive if we empty a building, that we are pretty aggressive in trying to dispose of it so that it doesn't sit there and deteriorate even more. And so that is part of what we have to do, is to push that to make it happen once we relocate people and get them into the locations that we're talking about.
I would love to see those on the market by early fall as we get out of those.
It would help with our budget.
thank you. Okay. All right, so we're moving along. Mr.
Madam
Watts.
President, before we start, I have a question. We have the student conduct manual in our packet.
Just for you to read it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we're not gonna do anything with it tonight.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, Madam Superintendent, you should have before you the financial statement for the month of March 2019, which indicates the 6th month of the fiscal year, which is we are halfway there as it relates to our financial statement. Contained in the financial statement would be the explanation of financial data. This is just a summary of the financial position that I usually write up each month. A definition of accounting terms provides the board a definition of some of the accounting terms that are contained within the financial statement. A snapshot analysis also provides a quick snapshot of what our revenues and expenditures are as of March of 2019. Monthly budget percentages, again, we're halfway there which is 50% of our budget. We also have a statement of cash flow showing the amount of revenues that have come in and the amount of expenditures that has been paid as of March of 2019. Then there's a pie chart that shows those cash flows. And lastly, you have the combined balance sheet and the combined statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. And Madam President, we could just turn to the back of this financial statement and let's look at those F reports. It says F exhibits. The very first one is the combined balance sheet that states our financial position as of March of 2019. And we see we had assets totaling about $34 million in our general fund, liabilities about $600,000. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's
The last part of it, probably the last 3 or 4 pages.
behind this. And while they're looking for that, Mr. Watts, I think there's a mistake on the statement of cash flows, the wrong year.
Oh, okay. I got 2018.
Yeah, you got 2019 for October. Maybe that is this year. I don't know.
I'll have a look at it, though. I'll have a look at it. It should have been October 2018. But
Yeah.
fiscal year, but October is fiscal year 2019.
Oh, so it is,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Never mind.
The combined balance sheet. Okay, the balance sheet shows assets again of $34 million, liabilities of about $600,000 with a fund balance of about $33.5 million. Out of that $33.5 million, about $8.4 million of that is what is called reserve fund balance, which are obligated funds. This means that these are purchase orders that are already outstanding. So we just haven't received the bills on those purchase orders yet. Therefore, our unreserved fund balance, meaning the amount we actually have, is about $25 million as of March of 2019. And as I stated last month, Madam President, our fund balance will continue to dwindle because we've already received the grand majority of our property taxes. We received the majority of our property taxes during the months of January and February. Some in December too, but mostly January and February. So we received the grand majority of those property taxes. Therefore, the fund balance will continue to dwindle some. I also just want to say, Madam President, I certainly heard several of the comments by the public. Just want to state what our fund balance is and what we projected at the end of FY 2019. I'm sure you recall that even during the budget hearings, we stated that we were facing about a $10 million deficit. That $10 million deficit, Madam President, still stands. Also, we received information from the State Department where we're losing almost 40 teacher units for 2019. That's another $2.8 million. That's where that $13 million is coming from. You got $10 million, again, that was the projected loss of FY 2019, and the loss of approximately 40 teacher units for 2020 that has to be accounted for. So there are 2 reasons as to why we're here. One of those reasons is because we have lost teacher units or lost units as a result of a dwindling student population over the last several number of years. And we have not made the amount of adjustments that should have been made over those years. That's why we're looking at over 200 teacher units over. Over 200 teacher units over. I think it's 224 teacher units over as of 2019. You add those 40 teacher units that you're losing for 2020, so now you're 260. So that's where that 140 is coming from, and so we're still going to be over 100 teacher units over, but we believe we'll be able to absorb that. So that's where that $13 million is coming from. So again, I stated that there are 2 reasons that we're here. One reason is because of the loss of teacher units, the loss of units, and we have not made those adjustments in accordance with the amount that we're losing. The second reason is what all of you all have just talked about. You're only receiving 10 mills of property taxes, which in my opinion, in a place like Montgomery, is an absolute shame that we're receiving 10 mills in property taxes. I don't know when the last time property taxes was raised for education in Montgomery. Do anyone know that?
Back in 1970.
1970? So just imagine, Madam President, just imagine if you were paid a salary based on 20 or 30 years ago. You had to take care of family and take care of all of your expenditures. Well, that's what we're faced with. So I think it's a responsibility of all of us to ensure that we do the necessary things to get the property taxes where they should be. And the last thing I want to say, and I say this all the time, you got Birmingham City School that have 4,000 to 5,000 fewer students than Montgomery. Birmingham received over $94 million in local revenues. Montgomery, again, 4,000 or 5,000 more students. We received $54 million in local revenues. Huntsville City, also 4,000 or 5,000 fewer students than Montgomery. They're receiving over $107 million in local revenues. Montgomery, $54 million in local revenues. We will not ever be able to maintain a level of instructional efficiency in our district unless we make those changes. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to ensure that our public is aware of that. Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Watts.
I have a question. I'm not going to start out and say this is a dumb question because I think it's an obvious question. If you're standing up there, I'm not against the 10 mil at all. I think it is low compared to other people. Pike Road, right, next to us. I'm all for it. Have a lot of questions about it before I can stand up with it. But you admitted we've been losing students for several years. Why, in your opinion, are we finding out about it in 2019?
Well, and I probably shouldn't answer this question, but I am going to answer it, Ms. Keith, Dr. Keith. I think it's important that whoever the CFO is, that we state the financial position of the school district. And if we don't, then the board requires that we do. Because you can't do things that you don't know. And I don't know whether you knew or not back a year, 2 years, 5 years.
We knew with Ed Richardson. We knew with Ed Richardson. We did nothing.
Okay, well, then of course if the board knew about it and did nothing, then I don't know what to say about that. But I think it's important that we report that information to the board so that the board will have the information that it needs to make the various decisions.
Well, 2 years ago I was here, and I have to agree it was presented with Ed Richardson. But at the same time, we have to remember that the board, and I know we heard this a lot in the news, had no power. And so if it really didn't get done, because all of our power could be overturned. So the State Department, I would have to say, really had the ball in their court. And if it needed to have been done, and they saw it, because that's why they came in for intervention, financial reasons, and it should have been done and handled at that time. So I just being here that time, I saw the ball the can being kicked down the road.
Okay, any other questions?
Oh, I actually do. And granted, not if, because our student enrollment is down. I know you addressed a lot of the expenditures. Will our obligation for having the 1 month reserve, does that decrease as well as everything else decreases?
Well, it will decrease if we make those adjustments, because the 1 month fund balance is our total expenditures in the general fund,
right,
divided by 12.
Right.
So if we reduce our expenditures, then the 1 month fund balance requirement will be reduced as well.
Okay. I had another question, but just give me a second. I'm trying to get my thoughts together. One of the things, it was brought up, I think, by someone in the audience about the monies, that 2.6 million. Has anyone from, I guess, even you, gone back to the county commission to see if, because that was a bond, and I wasn't on the board at that time, but I was on the board when it was discovered that the money was being deducted. Has anyone gone back to them to see if they would consider, instead of paying the debt services, using that part of that money to pay debt services, but to bring it back to MPS to add back to our budget? I know it's a small amount, but every little bit helps.
Right. I have not addressed that, but I will get with the superintendent, and certainly we could talk with the county commission about the possibility of reinstating that amount.
And my other question is, well, it probably will have to fit later, but I'll ask you this now. On where there's Roman numeral 5, under revenue expenditures for general fund, could you break down what the other financing resources are? But that's cash inflow and cash outflow. Could you break that one down, as well as under salaries and benefits, cash outflow, and just kind of give me a breakdown of what's others, what specifically are those?
Was that on the financial statement I just read off? I got my stuff out of order a little bit
It's
here now.
Roman numeral 5,
Cash flow.
statement of cash flows, general fund. It's
Okay.
page,
I'm
it's
sorry.
also page 5, under Roman numeral 5. Or I'll give you mine if you can't. You want my copy?
Okay,
Here
yes,
you go.
ma'am.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Where he did his,
The cash flow out.
Oh, cash outflow, salary and benefits. Oh, okay. These are the total, this is the total amount of salaries and benefits paid for each of those months out of the general fund. So you'll notice that out of the $16,951,000, let's look at the month of March.
Okay.
Okay. Out of the total expenditures, cash outflows of $19,385,540. $16,000,000. Then let's go down to salaries and benefits. $16,458,000 of that was salaries and benefits.
Thank you. They showed it to me, I just didn't see
Okay.
the explanation. I put an asterisk by it, and I was like, let me just ask the question.
Thank you, Mr. Watts.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are at consideration for approval, and I think I'll get this right tonight. Dr. Moore, you get to, want to make a recommendation? No.
Separately? Okay. All right, so, number one, I want to recommend approval of the personnel report, certified personnel.
Is there a motion?
Madam President, I make a motion that we accept the superintendent's recommendation.
I second.
Okay. Discussion?
Okay, I'll make it brief. Of course, as we all know, I had a little, I've used Mary's term, heartburn. Because it's probably the most appropriate right now. Because of the process, I know we asked for a board work session, and I thought that was really important. Again, let me just say, the cuts have to happen because we really do not have the money. 10 meals is just it's beyond ridiculous to try to pay for new bills using old money like that. But I did have, going back to the process, and I'm going to stay there, and that's why I wanted the work session, because I requested a copy of our RIF. So I read over, because it was new information, just to kind of remind myself. And I know that some board members have not even seen our RIF policy, but I wanted them, and I wanted it for all of us so that we can see it, because our job is to make sure we're taking care of our students. That's first and foremost. My concerns really are about the impact. And I've said that from the beginning, the impact. We know that our central office has to be trimmed. There is no denying that. And in fact, it's been talked about in the community that people wanted to see some changes there. But as I'm looking through everything and I think about the teachers, and I know it's not a secret, I used to teach in MPS. And so I can sympathize and empathize, and I do see both sides. And I've gone back and forth with this, knowing that in reality, there are some tough decisions, but tough decisions does not mean that I just lay off teachers and say, okay, I'm done. Tough decisions can also include, have we explored every avenue before we got down to the classroom? And that's kind of where I stand. When I look at the RIF policy, I was just looking at our process. I wanted to know, what's our process? And so some of the things that I saw was basically about our objective criteria: seniority, longevity of time and services, years of experience, degree, certification, license, licensure, job classifications, written or otherwise documented. And I feel a little uncomfortable as I looked through the personnel report and went, okay, did we follow our process? And I was assured that the process was followed, and I don't have any family and friends in central office at all. My family and friends are my husband and my children. And I do not get paid under the table. I just have to come in on some of the posts. I'm the poorest person probably on this board. So there's no kickbacks, but I'm always going to be fair, and I'm always going to stick to my conviction. And when I look at urban schools, cuts are all on personnel is always the first thing, and I know it's always going to be personnel, but our children are always impacted, and it seems to be one voice that carries all the weight for when it comes to our children. And the people who are doing the work are the most unheard people. That's in this to make sure that we're meeting the outcomes. And so, like I said, and I won't be long-winded because I think we all know I can, but we have processes and policies in place to keep these things fair. And I just can't say with surety that some things were fair. I can't say with certainty that everything was presented to the board looking at contracts, because even in the policy, it spells out how this is supposed to look. The board's legislative, I couldn't get it out, discretion is to identify areas, departments, groupings, classifications for reductions and layoff. And I can't say, and this is our policy, that we were involved in this so that we could make the most sound decisions. Instead of having a work session, we had a special call meeting. And I think that people did I know people put us in here to do the work of them to take care of their babies. By the way, I have 3. 1 graduated from public school, 2 are in public schools. My daughter was in 5th grade last year and had a sub every year. My daughter, I have another daughter who's had a sub all year. As a mother, I can speak on the impact that has. As a board member, I also see the need, but to be just, let's just put the children at the center. And not, and money is needed. And I had a friend that used to say, money can solve some problems, but it's not necessary to do the right thing. Because some things you can do for free. Having teachers in the classroom, and I realize that we have units, and I understand how there have been some things where things weren't done right. And so I think even for some of our principals in the audience, you got to look at yourselves and say, have I followed the policy? Because that has put us in this place by not doing, maybe not, maybe looking over some things. And as a board, and I'll say when I got here, maybe we should have did some more things to ensure. In fact, I know we did put together a budget that was denied. We included furloughs, we included attrition, we included looking at contracts. And I will say this, the State Department, Mr. Roller, you weren't here, we had Eggleston and Jason Taylor. They did allow us a work session, even though they didn't agree with us and they made that final decision, but we were granted that work session to air it all out, to look at everything and handle things. Now granted, maybe you have your votes, but I would tell people, we have a policy in place for a reason. And we need to do our due diligence to make sure that what we're doing, that first of all, we've been included, and that what we're doing is the right decision. And I wanted to go on my tirade about how the State Department gave a 10% raise, gave a $750,000 contract, but I said, you know what, at the end of the day, it's about these kids.
Thank you.
And out.
Other discussion?
Yeah, Madam President, I think I took up all the time last time we had a meeting, and I promise you I'm not gonna do that this time. I did have some concerns, about the departments that I talked with you about. And it's not that I'm against the cuts, because I know the cuts are supposed to be there, but I just don't like the plans. And I have talked to you personally about those three departments, so I'm done.
I'd like to make one comment. Go ahead. You look like you were ready to go, so you go ahead.
Well, no, it's not well, yes. I will say that I have vacillated back and forth after looking at this packet, and I think everyone knows how I felt about the last vote taken. And yes, I am a team player, but at the same time, when I say I vacillated, I noticed that, I asked the question, I think, last week about us taking into consideration the retirements, the resignations, the attrition, whatever. And I noticed we had 11 retirements, 7 resignations, 22 non-renewals. All of those, they came from different places. And the termination, so when it came down to using the term RIF, we are talking about probably less than 20, and we're looking at 59 people in those numbers out of the 80 that we were expecting to let go. And, I'm looking at, okay, how many more? Are there more to come down the pike? And I also was concerned about, as was so eloquently articulated by my colleague, the procedures. The fact that we do have a policy in place on how this should be done and whether or not we should be included. So I'm still, trying to deal with all of the confusion.
Okay.
Lisa?
I'm going to thank Brenda, because she took the words right on out of my mouth and did the math for me. Because I was estimating. I looked at the report, and there were about 20. When you look at the attrition part of it, as far as resignations and the other one, okay, there were only 21 non-renewals. We non-renewal in March every year. I was in the system for 30 years. We were doing that before. So we can sit up here and say all day it's about the children. It is those teachers that are with the children, and we're talking about here and now and this report. We know there's more to come, but right now we're voting on this report. There's only 21 teachers, okay? We've all sat here and said, hey, we know we need to cut. Hey, we know central office is top heavy. I'm telling you, this is tough. It's the toughest thing I've made in 5 years because some people that I know, appreciate, and know they have busted rear end. I'm looking at one of my students out there right now, and it kills me to look at him because I know I've seen that report. And it kills me to sit here and think that, hey, that's one of them. All I can do is put it in God's hands and hope that, you know, you're going to place some of these people where they need to be placed. But I'm going to say the same thing I said last week. I worry about the lateral moves, and that's where I kind of side and look at the people like what Mary, what a lot of them say about the way this was done, because some of it does look cherry-picked. Somebody's going to get hurt no matter how we do it. But when it came down to my vote, because a lot of people gave me a hard time going, well, you were all about this and you were all about, and then you switched. I had to look at the numbers. Do you look at the 3 or 4 people that your heart just dies, or do you look at the real picture? We are top heavy. I had people giving me a hard time about the counselors and all that kind of stuff, and then I had messages from people that I don't even go, Dr. Keith, you're right. We are psychologists, we are psychometrists, and they've pigeonholed us into doing just the data and eligibility. We're not allowed to do, because they made up jobs. This isn't the board's fault. My question a while ago, why didn't we know about this 7 years ago? I'm not going to point fingers. I could look to my right, but I'm going to tell you this. This is a human resource problem. And it should have been tackled a long time ago, and we got to be the bad guys. And we can put it into the state, who's, to me, making us be the bad guys. Why didn't y'all do it last year? You weren't here, but I'm going to ask you, why didn't you do it? So I just hope we're looking at the real picture.
May I add just one of 2 clarifying points, if I may? Some of these reductions have already occurred in your previous board reports where you voted on resignations, retirements, etc. So that 140 is a total that you're trying to target overall. So some of them will be done through attrition and other things, and that's why you're not going to see 140 teachers getting a pink slip.
But isn't it normal to have 140 every year?
There's no such thing as normal. Every year you look at what you have. It's the superintendent's responsibility to bring the information needed to the board and to make these recommendations on cuts, adding, whatever it is. This is superintendent's responsibility to do that. Then other departments operate under the direction of the superintendent. They don't go out, they can't do anything without a recommendation from the superintendent. And so if the superintendent is not brave enough or bold enough to bring forth what needs to be brought forth, then it doesn't happen. So I can't go back to whatever happened 5, 6, 7 years ago. I can only say that right now I'm trying to right the ship as much as I can. And it is hard, Burn. I've received a pink slip in my lifetime, so I know how that feels. So, but overall, we're trying to level it out. If you lose 260 teachers over time, but you lose the money from the state, but you keep the 260 teachers, then that money is coming out of your local funds. That's how that works. So over time, as your allocation from the state is reduced, then over time, every year, you need to look at that as a system and balance that out as much as possible. You're still going to have some local units, but every year you have to look at that, or else you're going to get out of whack again. So this year is a big kind of jump, but
correction. It's a correction.
Yes, ma'am. And so every year you have to look at it, and if you don't, then it's going to keep, it's going to be out of whack unless you kind of level it out as much as you can. So that's what we're doing this year. A bigger bite than probably you would normally have, unless we don't have that ugly word proration anymore. But when we had proration, some of you who've been on the board, you remember how that worked. You were told in October that you were gonna get 10% cut, and you still had all the teachers that you'd had, and you couldn't let anybody go.
And Dr. Moore, let me apologize for this. If I have made it, and I probably have made it sound like this has been going on for years. You are not at fault. I want to thank you for actually stepping up. I know it's as tough for this board, and it's just as tough for you to make this type of recommendation. So I commend you for the hard decision that you're making. You're the first since I've been here.
Well, thank you.
All right,
So-
I've been really quiet, and I would like to say to anybody listening, this is the hardest decision ever. But we have to, the ship being righted is a real good way to put it. We have to get our finances in order. We have to get our attorney in order. We need more money from the, from the village. That's a good way to put it. This ad valorem tax issue is going to be something you'll hear, I think, more and more from us, because nobody wants to take teachers out of classrooms. Nobody up here does. But it is what we have to do to get the ship from sinking, and that's, I think, where we have it. We've had a recommendation is that...
I had one other comment to you. You go ahead, because I've already spoken. You go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. To me, the confusion has been with the 140 teachers and some of the other, but that has been the bulk of it. So in my understanding, it wasn't coming in and saying, okay, this right here, 140 teachers, we're cutting them. Some of that included in there were some teachers that were going to retire anyway. Is that?
Yeah, so, you're trying to target 140 as a reduction, but some may retire, some may resign. So you've gotten some of those over time, but when you put a plan in place, there's a target number that you're trying to reach. And so today, warm bodies, you might not send out 140 pink slips.
Okay, that was.
But you're trying to get to that 140, and the important piece is that you don't call that number back. That's the important piece, is when you get to that number, and it may even go lower depending on people who leave, because over the summer people leave and go other places, or they retire, and some of them may not tell you until August that they're retiring. But you don't want to add back, because if you do, you're going to be right back where you started.
I probably have 3 questions. And I know we're on this for a long time, but again, we really needed a work session so we could have ironed this out. So I apologize for having to take this time to do it. But before I vote, I want to make sure I'm comfortable as I can be with my vote. So, again, in our policy, it spells out how the board should, when we're headed in this direction. I still, and Lisa's right, this is probably, I wasn't on the board 7 years ago, but there were things, I'm assuming by listening to you, that were not brought to you all's attention back then. And Dr. Moore, you are very, you're courageous for stepping into this and doing what you feel is best. But we want to be at our best too. I want to be at my best. I want to make sure I'm asking the questions, making sure the process is being followed. Let me just say again, I do not have family and friends on here. And the reason I feel that the discussion or the work session was important, so that we could talk about the impact and look at the full picture. And that was one of the things I pointed out at the special call meeting. The plan to get to the outcomes, to get to wherever we're having to go. When it's just, I don't, this seems like this was, I won't say it seems like it was done in central office, unless other board members were included, and maybe I wasn't, speak up now, forever hold your peace, because I wasn't included. And I would have liked to have had a discussion so that we could look at all avenues before and come up with a plan that the board felt comfortable with. We probably still, however the votes would fall, probably still would have failed that way, or it probably could have been more buy-in. But right now, we're on public display, and I said this before, it felt so political the last time. It feels political this time. But the decision has to be made, and it really felt political the last time. I'm not here for politics. I'm here to make decisions that are going to lift the kids. But at the end of the day, we're at 10 meals, and I'm not so, I know that the central office, because I wish honestly that those two could have been separate to vote on. But right now, when it comes to the teachers, and because we had a huge number of subs, a astronomical number. I remember Goodwin walking in that building, looking at subs from one end of the hallway to the other end of the hallway. I was in the building, and I saw it for myself. And it concerns me that as we do this, that apathy would kick in. We hired teachers. We had a job fair, but word of mouth is going to kill us. There's no stability and consistency with MPS, and that's not going to be something that's going to attract people to our system. But that's just my position on it. I'm going to be quiet. I will not.
And I know this is not going to change anybody's opinion, but I'm also concerned about what are our trade-offs. I gave those numbers, and I gave them. That is why I was going back and forth and making my decision. But at the same time, we have to look at. Sometimes the public wants to know about transparency. Well, what we're hearing here is that we also want to know about the transparency and what are we going to be asked to trade off at another date. Those are the kinds of things that worry me. And it is not just verbiage to say that this is about the children. It is most certainly about the children and the impact that the teacher in the classroom is going to have on the instruction that the students receive, the safety issues that the students and the teachers will encounter. So, we need to make certain that we are well informed and that we are making informed decisions. And when those of us at the table take a vote, we must take that vote based on our core values, those things that we believe to be true and best for the system.
Okay. All right. I'm going to ask if there is a pleasure to put this before the board now. Is there a motion?
It's already been voted.
It's already on push. Okay. I'm going to call for the vote then. Those that are in favor of accepting the personnel report, certified personnel as presented, please show a raise of hands. Those opposed? Okay, that motion passes. We have before us the personnel report, classified personnel.
I recommend approval of the personnel report, classified personnel.
Okay, is there a motion?
Madam President, I motion that we accept the personnel report from the superintendent.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, discussion?
Not you.
Okay.
You don't get to talk.
I'm sorry, sir, we don't.
You don't.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion here? Those that are in favor, please signify by a show of hands. Those opposed? The motion has passed.
Madam President, I recommend approval of the personnel report, certified personnel addendum 1.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation on the personnel report, certified addendum 1.
Is there a second?
I second.
Yeah.
the
Can we
addendum.
please have quiet in the audience? Any discussion on that? Those in favor, please signify by a show of hands. Those opposed? The motion carries. There is
Okay.
one
I
more.
recommend approval of the proposal from Attorney Alan Ziegler regarding acquiring his services as a tax referendum consultant.
Is there a motion?
I move to accept the superintendent's recommendation for the proposal from Attorney Alan Ziegler regarding his services for the tax referendum consultant.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Those in favor, please signify by a show of hands. Opposed? Thank you. Our next meeting is scheduled for June 11th as a work session, and we are adjourned.
Because I'm gonna have to get myself where I'm supposed to be. Hey, ma'am. Yeah, ma'am.